Hello folks and welcome back. We'll call this part 2 of our celebration of the Schuylkill Navigation System's 200-year anniversary. We are still in Schuylkill County and we are next to the Schuylkill River, and we're at a spot that I have been to before, and it wasn't as heavily posted the last time I was here. Possibly my fault that it is now, but we are at the location of exit lock 25. Now, exit lock 25 was part of Tom Lord's Canal. And there were different sections of canal named for different people. This particular section, let me zoom in on that lock first of all. Hang on a second. I wish I could get in there and show yous, but that would be poor judgment on my part. And as you can see, it's heavily posted here. So Tom Lord's Dam was further upstream. It cut through the land. It comes to an end. Tom Lord's Lock comes to an end right here, exit 25. And then the Schuylkill Canal now becomes slack water. Now, if you look right here and you see this stacked stone, this is our towpath. We're gonna follow that for a while. Now, what I want to do with these videos is actually walk the entire length from where we are right now back to Port Clinton, which probably about a 45-minute walk or so. So what I'm going to do is split the videos into parts, but I just want to capture the whole length, the whole path that the boatsmen took. So there'll be sections when we're just walking and listening to the river. I won't have much to say. I don't have enough information to talk that whole amount of time, nor do you probably want to hear me ramble on for 45 minutes. So for now, we're just going to walk along the old Schuylkill Navigation System towpath, which I believe through here was actually washed out. I'll show you why I say that in a minute. At this point in the canal, the river would have been slack water. There would have been a dam downstream. So behind us, when the canal boats came out of Lock 25, they would have came out into a much deeper Schuylkill River. So now the reason I say about us being on the towpath, but it not being, I think back there it was washed out. You saw those rocks. Pure slope right to the river. But we get back to this area here and we start to see the construction of retaining wall. Let me go down there, get a better look. It's a little thorny right here. Have to be careful. Okay. So that's all retaining wall there to help stabilize the mule path or tow path. And then again, the river would be slack water at this time. I'll rehash some old facts that I gave on a previous video, or the previous video to this one actually, and other videos. We've been featuring the canal quite a bit. Here's a nice look. So this is all rudimentary stacked stone stabilizing wall for the towpath. Which dates back to most likely 1820, when the build first started, the canal being incorporated in 1815, and construction beginning around 1820, completion in well, I believe it was completed before 1825. I believe it was completed in 1824, and operations were beginning on it, but it was officially opened in May of 1825. So a little info about the canal. The canal itself was most prosperous from 1835 until 1841, which, if you think about it, makes sense. If they have the proper weather conditions and there's no drought or flooding, things are rolling along smoothly. There's no railroads really to compete with. The earliest railroads in this area at the time are the Mine Hill and Schuylkill Haven, way up to our north, and the Little Schuylkill River Railroad, which we'll be coming up to in a little while. Now, they were originally both strap iron railroads, and if I'm not mistaken, their original motive power was the same as a canal. It was mules, and they were pretty much just pulling carts full of coal down strap iron railroads, which I'm sure most of you know, but if you don't, a strap iron railroad, pretty sure it was just a piece of wood with a thin piece of iron fastened to the top of it, or set over top of the wood, and they would pull the carts full of anthracite out of the mines along the Mine Hill and Schuylkill Haven, and they had a dock, a coal dock in Schuylkill Haven, where they loaded the coal onto canal boats, this very same canal, and made their way down the river. Now, the other railroad that was operating close to the same time as the canal, or the other original railroad of the area, was the Little Schuylkill. That's the railroad that runs from Port Clinton up to Tamaqua. Modern day, it's Reading and Northern Railroad. For most of its life, it was part of the Philadelphia and Reading, later the Reading system. Conrail might have had it for a little bit. Anyway, that was also an early anthracite road, strap iron, bringing coal from the Tamaqua region to Port Clinton, where the Schuylkill Canal had coal docks, and they would be loaded up from the little Schuylkill riverside. This is all predating Philadelphia and Reading. They weren't even up here yet. They weren't even a railroad yet. They didn't come along till sometime in the 1840s, if I'm not mistaken. They finally made their way up here. I could be wrong. Might have been 1830s. But the Little Schuylkill and the Mine Hill and Schuylkill Haven both predate the Philadelphia and Reading. The reason I mention those railroads again is because they did business with the Schuylkill Canal, Schuylkill Navigation System. The record year of tonnage for the Schuylkill Navigation System was 1859, and they hauled almost 2 million tons of, I would assume, mostly anthracite. I don't know if they were hauling other goods at the time, possibly lumber, possibly anything, I guess, that was being created along the canal could have been part of that tonnage. But since the canal was built for transportation of anthracite, we have to lean towards most of that 2 million tons being coal. And again, that was 1859. As I mentioned, with the rise of the railroads, traffic along the canal began to disappear. And with the Philadelphia and Reading coming up through, you could kind of see the writing on the wall. You had the canal transporting the anthracite from Port Carbon way up to the north of us, all the way down to Market in Philadelphia. And of course, there was other coal, as I just explained, to be picked up along the way, along with other goods. But now you have the Philadelphia and Reading coming through. It's going to be a more efficient, much faster way to get coal from the north coal fields in Schuylkill County, up, Pottsville, Frackville. This is where the Philadelphia and Reading is heading to. Not to mention they're going to take over the Mine Hill and Schuylkill Haven, so that becomes part of theirs too. So now the Philadelphia and Reading has access to all this coal that the Schuylkill Canal once pretty much had the market all to themselves for a little bit. So with other factors and droughts and minor strikes, floods, because floods and droughts both will affect the canal, it began to fall out of favor a little bit. So in 1870, the Philadelphia and Reading would actually lease the Schuylkill Canal, and it would be under their control. And they operated it for a little bit, but from Port Clinton north, it was pretty much on its way out. And then it would be abandoned in 1877, which makes sense. The canal would be abandoned north of Port Clinton, which is where we're walking now, in 1877. And then not soon after that, Pennsylvania Railroad comes through with their Schuylkill branch, and they build right over top of a lot of the canal sections north of Port Clinton. Not a lot, but enough to know that the canal is done. And the Schuylkill branch of the PRR is now in the area. So we've come to a point here. This is kind of a neat little spot. There's a trail that will follow this little creek right here, and it will take you to a parking lot for Pennsylvania State Game Land. I forget what the number is, but you can park there. And again, none of this is where we started the video. It's all private property. Those folks own a huge section of really cool land. I've seen it on the map. It's really cool. But it's all posted, and rightly so. But they got a couple canal locks and some Allentown and Auburn railroad bed on their property. They're quite lucky if they're into history. Sorry, off topic. This trail will take you to a parking lot. You can access it through, I believe it's Broad Street in Port Clinton. If I remember, I will put all this information in the description. I will also put maps up for you to see. If I forget to mention it and you have any questions, please just ask. It's not a problem for me to let you know where anything is that you can legally get to. The Allentown and Auburn Railroad is also a player in this. You guys know that I love the Allentown and Auburn, love trying to figure out its history. It was going to come through right here, somewhere in this area. I believe it's like right up here. But anyway, this would have all had to have been filled in, and a culvert would have had to have been built here for the Allentown and Auburn Railroad. Again, I think it might be up here. One of the cuts are there's three little tiny cuts right up in this area that I've explored. I've explored this area thoroughly, but this is kind of like the end of semester project, I guess you could say. So the Allentown and Auburn is also a player in this, but not really, because the railroad would never be completed. But they're trying to squeeze their way through here as well. That's in the 1850s. 1854, if I remember correctly. So right above us now, the Allentown and Auburn was trying to make their presence. They would have had a nice culvert right here, or a large fill with a small culvert. Either way, they would have had to have filled this area. So again, river would still be slack water, caused by what was known as Hummels Dam, which is where we're kind of getting close to. And then Hummels Canal will be what is created by Hummels Dam. That'll be a separate video. That'll probably be part 3. So there's more of the Allentown and Auburn bed on private property, getting closer to the town of Auburn. I can't get to it though, it's on private property. This is about as far as I've gotten of explorable Allentown and Auburn grading, as far west as I've gotten. So again, this would have had to have been another fill as well. And then right up here, there's actually a rock cut on the other side of that. I've walked through that. And again, this is posted, so, and I've already been into all these spots, so I'm not going to record myself again going to them. But if we were to walk right up through here, right on the other side of that lump is actually it's a flat grade, and behind that is a rock cut, Allentown and Auburn. So they would have had to go and across this, again, put in a large fill, possibly a culvert, because I'm sure at some point during heavy rains, this probably gets rather wet. It would need drainage of some sort.